are we actually now seeing the beginning of a nuclear breakout? Both because of recent intelligence we hear about this deep underground facility near Natanz, the so-called Pickaxe Mountain, the claims being made in the last 48 hours that the Iranians had moved uranium centrifuges into those very deep shelters that can't be hit by any conventional munitions, coupled with this announcement that the Saudis were going to get a nuclear deal from the Americans. Now, details are still pretty sketchy, but the idea is that America is dropping its objections to the Saudis developing the nuclear power sector, which may possibly include uranium enrichment.
Because I think, a nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia has been discussed for years. I think the Biden administration looked at it. Although enrichment was never part of the deal, it was going to be a civilian nuclear power for civilian use. So imagine that, the Sunni superpower in the region, Saudi Arabia, gets the green light from Donald Trump to not only have nuclear power with the Americans together, they're going to make money out of it, but also is allowed to enrich uranium, which is the very point over which the Americans went to war against Iran. I mean, this is not just is it bonkers in terms of hypocrisy, the timing of it couldn't be worse because it undermines the smallest bit of moral high ground that America might still possess when it comes to containing Iran's nuclear ambitions. But also, crucially, Mark, this was held out as a carrot to the Saudis should they eventually come to the altar and have proper relations with recognition of Israel and relations with Israel. And that was always part of the deal. You recognize Israel, and we will allow you to develop a nuclear program because, of course, you have to protect yourself against the Iranians, and they have plenty of reason to do so, especially now that Saudi Arabia is once again targeted by the Iranians as the ceasefire has collapsed. But they basically jumped the gun on this one. Now, there are other reasons as well, of course. We should mention the Palestinians, but this was a crucial part of that dynamic, and it's gone.
I think it speaks to a change in the power dynamic between Mohammed bin Salman and President Trump. You're right. It had been held out for years as the carrot. And the fact that it's been given away now, I think, hints at the dependence that Trump has on the Saudis in order to keep operations in and around the Gulf going. The Prince Sultan Air Base, various other places. And of course, Saudi Arabia is so huge that the overflight rights are critically important. Going back a couple of months, when the Americans initially declared this Operation Freedom, when they said they were going to get the tankers out, and then 36 hours later they pulled the plug on it, that was because the Saudis had stopped them flying. So we've seen how critical Saudi Arabia's cooperation is to carrying on this US operation. And it looks like MBS has leveraged that to get the nuclear deal nice and early.
Just quickly before we go, I mean, the Strait of Hormuz, which you spent more time talking about than any other waterway in the world ever, has now been joined by the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in the Red Sea, which is the one that, of course, the Saudis have been using to get their oil out. The Houthis getting involved. I don't know how much time we've got to talk about that, but I think we should just mention that very briefly, because in the escalation of the war, the ceasefire, I think, is gone, isn't it? I mean, it's kaput. But the fact that Bab el-Mandeb has now been included means that the Saudis have both the straits on which they rely potentially closed off. And that is really bad news.
Yep. Bad news for the Far East, certainly. We know that several tankers turned around in the Red Sea on their way south towards that other strait, having had the oil piped over the Trans-Arabian pipeline from the other coast to avoid Strait of Hormuz. Now, I think the key questions here will be, is the Houthi blockade effective? We don't know. It's been threatened many times during the past month, since the 28th of February. And to what extent is the Hormuz blockade still effective? Is it perhaps that the Iranians sense there's a bit more leakage going on through Hormuz that causes them to try and apply more pressure on the world economy through their Houthi allies? Lots of questions that we're going to have to discuss at greater length in a future episode.
And to what extent are ship owners and insurers worried about this? Or is this now the new normal? I'm not sure, because the price of oil, last time I checked, which is this morning, has now gone up to $95 a barrel. That's about $25 higher than it was 10 days ago. So that's not good either, is it, for anyone?